if you look at Excel's built-in formula auditing capabilities, you're stuck with the trace precedence arrows and the trace dependence arrows. And they're, to be honest, a bit limited. For example, look at this formula. We're looking up information from cell F3 in the table prices, widgets columns, and we're returning the price column. So if we were to trace precedence, what we would end up with is just this. A direct arrow pointing to the F3 cell and a dashed arrow here with a tiny table icon here. Not many people know that you need to actually double click this arrow to get the go-to box so that it enables you to go to the cell where the formula is pointing to. And as you can see, it has two ranges pointing to other sheets, the column A of the data tab and column B of the data tab. Notice how in this go-to dialog, the structured references have been replaced by cell addresses. So that makes it even harder to track which item in this go-to box belongs to which item in this formula. Moreover, it frequently happens if you have a longer file name or maybe a long tab name that these addresses disappear out of view. You actually have to click in the reference box here and scroll to the right to see the actual cell addresses. So in comes my Ref3 Analyzer, which I have already installed on all of my computers. And you just click precedence here. And then this dialog pops open. And once the dialog is open, you can use the down arrow key to scroll through the different cell addresses in the formula. And notice how it highlights the item in the formula up here too. And at the same time, it highlights the cell in question, in this case, cell F3. And if I click down arrow once more, it's going to highlight the widget column in the prices table and the price column in that same prices table. And notice how it's highlighted here as well. And finally, and I think beautifully, if the formula in question yields a range, it will give you this formula points to item in the tree. And if you click that, it's going to highlight the cell that this formula actually is getting the value from. So that is tracing cell precedence. So here we see both the precedence and the dependence of cell F7 here. So F7 uses cell F3, the widgets table, and it also gives its result to cell F8, which is calculating turnover, which of course is price times amount. Now, remember how I clicked the precedence button on the formulas tab here and how it displayed like this? Well, Ref3 Analyzer also has a visualization button, which works similar to the trace precedence button, but it gives a lot more information. For example, it shows you that the formula in this cell is actually taking values from a range that looks like this. And if you click on that little box, it's going to take you to that range. And you can see that one of the arguments of the formula is actually this column. And if we click on that column again, it's going to take us back to the formula in question. And the other range that the formula is taking values from is this one. And we can click here to go back again. And finally, the first argument of our formula is pointing to this cell. Suppose that this formula is pointing to cell F30 rather than F3. As you can see, 30 is outside of the viewable area. Ref3 Analyzer takes that into account, and when you click Visualize, it will show the content of cell F30 here so that you can see it. And if you click here, it's going to take us to F30. And if we click here, it's going to take us back to the formula cell, like that. Of course, we also provided a button to get rid of all these arrows and stuff. It's the clear arrow button here. And it's removed, and it just removes all of the arrows. It also automatically gets rid of all the arrows when you save the file. One thing that Excel's built-in trace dependence does not do is look at objects in the spreadsheet. So, for example, this chart here has a series that is pointing to these cells over here, but there's no arrows from the chart to the cells. So if you go to Ref3 Analyzer and click on the Object References button, you'll see that it found the chart that I mentioned just now, and you'll see that it has detected that the series 1 is pointing to these cells. And as you see here, it looks through loads of stuff. To be honest, I stole this code from my FlexFind utility, of course. And if we just show 2 levels in this tree, we can better see what we have. For example, on the pivot table sheet, in cell C4 to C6, we have spark lines, and the spark lines take their values from cell B4 to B6. And notice how there's a checkbox here. And when I click checkbox, it highlights the checkbox here. And when I click on the cell reference, it actually puts the dashed lines around the cell that the checkbox is using. Same goes for all the other controls. If I click on the control, it's going to highlight the control or select it, like you see here. And if I expand this and click on linked cell, it's going to highlight that cell, which is this one. Notice how it also does validation formulas. So this cell contains a validation formula, and to prove that, I'll just show you the validation rule of this cell. You see we have a validation rule that says that the start date must equal H4 and the end date must equal J4. Another very important feature, at least I think so, is the detection of circular references. I've opened up a file that contains circular references, and let's just click OK to make sure that we can look at the file, which is right here. Now, if you go to Excel's Formula tab and look at the error checking, it's going to tell you that we have a circular reference, and those are the red arrows that you see here. It's going from E13 to G11 to E9 to C11. What Excel doesn't tell you is that there are actually 2 more circles here. We have a circle spanning these yellow cells, and we have another circle spanning these yellow cells. And because these cells are intertwined, we in fact have not just 3 circular references, but in fact we have a whole web of circular references. So let's start our circular reference tracing button. And because this is going to make changes to the file, it offers to create a backup copy before it starts. We don't need that because this is a demo file. So as you can see, Ref3 Analyzer detected 3 circles, and if we click on the circle items here, you'll see the circles in question highlighted, including all of their reference arrows from the trace dependence and trace precedence. And if we expand the circle, we can see which cells each circle comprises. And this is all very, very keyboard friendly. All I'm using currently is the arrow key. So I'm doing right arrow to expand the circle, and then down arrow to go to the references, or the up arrow. The tool is by default hiding cells that refer to themselves. For example, if you want a cell to keep a value, then a trick some people use is by letting the cell refer to itself using an if statement. You can remove that check and see if there are any cells, but there aren't. So Ref3 Analyzer isn't just about references. It's also about helping you create documentation. For example, it has a table of contents button. And this feature automatically checks for all of the different objects that you have in your file that it's capable of creating a table of content for. So this demo file contains all of the objects that we can add as a table of content item. So as you can see, it does sheets, tables, external links, pivot tables, charts, and controls. The tool also enables you to set a tab name for the table of content. And finally, you can add a reference to the table of content on every worksheet. So let's do that and click OK. So once it's done, here you have your table of content sheet. And it starts with the sheets, then the external links. And notice how if a link isn't found, it colors the cell red. It has all of your tables too, and a link to each table. So if you want to know where your data 1 table is or table data 2, you just click on the link here and it'll take you to where that table is. A simple F5 enter takes us back to this list. And for example, if it is a pivot table, it gives you both the location of the table and the location of the source data if there's source data. Same goes for charts. It tries to give you the source data for a chart, but only if it's a pivot chart. And finally, controls give you more information like the link to the control itself. Let's go back. The location of the linked cell and the source. For those of you who were paying attention, we also have a remarks column in every table. This remarks column is remembered when you click the table of content button again. So for example, let's just place a remark here. Let's do another remark at the external pivot tab. Let's just move that tab a bit. Put it here. So external pivot now is after the data 1 tab. So let's click that table of content button again, and we should see the remark 2 move downwards along with the external pivot reference. Takes a bit. And there you can see that remark 2 has sticked with the external pivot entry on the table. So this tool makes it very easy to create a starter for your documentation for a spreadsheet, because you can simply click the button, it will list all of the things that are in your workbook, and that gives you space to add remarks to each and every item so that you can explain what the item is for, and you'll never have to worry that your remarks are going to, be reshuffled and go out of place. So that's table of content, and we have all sheet statistics. If we click that, it'll give you a list of all kinds of statistics about the worksheets, such as the used range of the sheet, how many cells with conditional formatting, how many with data validation, how many formulas, empty cells, and maybe most importantly, the calculation time for that worksheet. So that if you have a model that calculates slowly, simply click the All Sheets button, and you can then sort this table from largest to smallest and have the slowest worksheet at the top. I think that's enough talk about my Ref3 Analyzer utility. There's more functions here that you can use, but I'm not going to speak about them today.